Continuing on with the Problem of Evil series that I've kind of been covering a lot lately, we got WarnerWallace from Cold Case Christianity, and he's going to weigh in on what his thoughts of how a good God can allow evil. So without further ado, right after this ado, if you like the video, please subscribe. It really helps a small channel like mine out a lot. I'd really appreciate it. Give a like, leave a comment. It helps the YouTube algorithm push this video out further. Now, without further ado, let's see what WarnerWallace has to say about the problem of evil.
Let's finish with something that some people believe is evidence against God, and that is evil. This is a case that my dad worked in 19...
Real quick, it's not evidence against God. It's evidence against an all-good, all-loving God. Some God could exist who is entirely evil, and this would be completely compatible with that God. It's not evidence against a God. It's evidence against your God. Just be clear.
In 74. It was a murder of a 10-year-old girl in 1972. This is my dad. He hates that picture because he feels like he looks bad in that photograph. He does look bad in that photograph. He does. First of all, he's got a big crease across his chest there. Not just a picture of being folded, but he's got this polyester suit. He hated that.
Why are you talking trash about Paps? WarnerWallace, stop it.
That polyester suit. And then he's got his butt sticking out here, which is actually just his gun, but he thinks it looks like his butt, so he always hated this picture. He's walking a guy across to the courtroom who confessed to killing this 10-year-old girl. Every horrific thing he did to her. It's a 1,000-page transcript.
So real quick here, I'm assuming he's going to go with the free will argument. Why does God allow evil? Well, because in order to truly have free will, you have to be able to make the choice to do good or to do evil. I don't like this argument at all because God has taken away many instances of free will from me. For example, I cannot unalive somebody with my mind from across the world simply by thinking about them. Now, does that infringe on my free will because I cannot do that? I don't think so. So why doesn't he just take it a little bit further than that? In the same way that I cannot fly, no matter how hard I try. If I go out and stand in the field and flap my arms or use my brain, anything, no matter what, I will never be able to fly. God has taken away my free will to fly. He did not grant me this ability. Why couldn't he take it one step further and simply not give us the ability to murder or to cause harm to another person, to cause harm to our fellow human beings? Why didn't he just not grant us this ability? But we'll see what he has to say. Maybe I'm wrong here.
None of it is true. He didn't kill this little girl. He was crazy, but we excluded him with blood evidence on the eve of the trial. This case is still unsolved. But the terrible things that happened to this little girl, who I will call Jackie, were really hard to process. This is true evil. But like every act of evil I've ever worked, certain things had to come together in a certain unusual way in order for it to occur. First of all, she was a very trusting girl who would get in the car with somebody. Not every kid's that way. And not that, it happened on a holiday. I said it happened on Thanksgiving, but in the book I said it happened on Christmas. This is still an open case, so I've changed it a little bit. But it was a holiday, and her parents were cooking dinner. They didn't even pay attention to what she was doing. If it's not a holiday and she's not that trusting, this never would have happened. But not only that, this guy who did this to her, trust me, he's got some issues. If he's like other pedophile killers I've worked, he's probably had a bad upbringing himself that led him to this place. If he doesn't have that bad upbringing and it's not a busy holiday and she's not that trusting, this doesn't happen. Not only that, it had access to a place to take her, because we found her the next day, dropped off in Oxnard, 1 county north of us on the rocks. But he had a place to hold her for a day. If he doesn't have that place and a way to get her there, none of this happens. And not only that, he had unbelievable opportunistic timing. I don't think he stalked her and watched her for some period of time. He just happened to be driving down the road when she happened to be available. Oh my gosh. If this set of circumstances doesn't happen just like this entire thing doesn't happen, and the relationships are very complicated. I may never know as an investigator what set of circumstances had to align perfectly that caused Jackie to suffer this evil event. And that's the problem. In the universe we have today, we also know that there are good reasons to believe God exists, but there's also one good reason to think he doesn't. I've already talked to you about the first 7. These are all things that point toward God. But the best explanation outside the room. This is why we call this stuff inculpating evidence. The other kind of evidence that points away from somebody, like an alibi, is called exculpating evidence. Is the presence of evil and injustice in the universe the one thing that disqualifies an all-loving, all-powerful God? Because think about it.
I wouldn't say it's the one thing, but it's definitely a thing, sure.
But how could a God like this allow that to happen to Jackie? Epicurus is quoted with this phrase. I think it's pretty powerful, and it's millennia old. This is from about 600 BC. I'm sorry, about 300 BC. Is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Well, then he's not omnipotent. Is he able but not willing? Then he's malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then whence cometh evil? Is he neither able nor willing? Then why call him God? If there's evil in the world, well, how can you say there's an all-powerful, all-loving God? He either's too lame to stop it.
All right, I'm going want to slow this down. I got it at 1.5. Well, let's slow it down a little bit.
Which means he's not all powerful, or doesn't care to stop it, which means he's not all loving. He's disqualified.
I think
And
this
that's
is
the
a fair.
question.
I think this is a fair argument. I really do. I really do, because this video so far is, to me, seems like he's leading up to the free will argument, which we just discussed a minute ago. But this free will doesn't explain why children are born with cancer, and this is an answer. This is the question that I want the answer to. Why did God allow a world where babies can be born with cancer? He could simply take that. First off, he could have not allowed it to come into existence in the first place, or he could just cure it right now, right? And we wouldn't have to attribute it to some god. He could just through our DNA. There's many animals in the world who don't get cancer. They're just genetically modified in such a way, genetically mutated in such a way that they're just cancer resistant. He could just slip that into our DNA, and he could eradicate it now, and we wouldn't have to attribute this to some miracle. A lot of times people say, like, the problem of divine hiddenness is he can't just show himself because people need to come to believe through faith, or whatever garbage people say. So I can understand, like, well, the reason he doesn't do that is because then everybody would know that God exists, and for some reason that would be a bad thing. But anywho, he could just slip it into the DNA. There's all right, let's go.
Is God disqualified? I don't think
But that is a good argument. I like that argument. It's good.
so, and I'll tell you why. When I find there's a way I can explain a suspect's involvement, even though it appears to be exculpating evidence, I have to look at those. Here, I think there are 7 things, 5 or 6, 7 things that might explain why God would ever allow an evil act.
Okay, so might explain. So essentially what I just heard is, I don't know. We don't have an answer, but maybe this stuff. Maybe this stuff. Please this stuff. If you close your eyes and you believe really hard, probably, maybe, possibly this stuff, please. That's what I just heard, but let's go.
Very complicated. I think you have to have a proper view of eternity, a proper view of free agency and the nature of what love really is, a proper understanding of the role it can be used to develop character, how it calls us to him, how sometimes evil just happens because you make bad decisions, it's not on God. And we have a limited
Okay, so wow. All right, so appropriate definition of love, role, and character development. This is a bad argument. This is I'm curious what he's going to say about this. Existence as a consequence. I don't know, because I don't think the babies who are born with cancer should be. That's not a consequence that they suffer due to their own actions. I don't think it's going to do much in the role of character development for them, because they probably will have passed away. And this is okay. Let's just be honest. You can get rid of all of these. You can get rid of. I know you can't see what I'm pointing to on the screen here, but you can get rid of an accurate view of eternity, proper reverence for free will, appropriate definition of love. I don't know what he's going to say about that one. Character, you can get rid of all of these, and you can go to this big question mark. This is the only argument that Christians really have to fall back on, is we just don't understand. We're too dumb. We're too stupid. We don't understand God's divine plan of why he would allow babies to be born with cancer. But there must be a plan, because he's an all-good, all-loving God. So in some way, shape, or form, the babies who are born and die of cancer, it must be that we just don't comprehend why God would allow it. But rest assured, it's a good thing. But let's keep going.
understanding of the relationship between all these things. Why do I say this? Because in the end, all of these things have to be assessed before we consider any single act of evil. Let me just break out one of these. I break out all of them in the book. I'll break out one of these to show you what I mean.
Do all of them,
As an
man.
atheist, I had a problem with the problem of evil. But you shouldn't as a Christian, really. Here's what I mean. As an atheist, I believe that all of life was a line segment between 2 dots called birth and death.
Okay.
I expect to get 90 years pain-free in those 2 dots. If anything happens to steal away my pain-free 90 years, I'm going to be upset. And I'm going to see it as an act of evil. So, for example, if I get sick...
No, that's not how anybody, even Christians, define the problem of evil. If anything no, sir. Come on, you're being dishonest.
40, and then I suffer for 10 years before I die of cancer, I'm gonna be upset. And I'm gonna call this evil. Why? Because it robbed me of what I expected, because my view of life was the 90-year line segment.
No.
Got it? But what if I'm foundationally wrong about my presupposition? What if life is something other than this? What if life is not really a line segment between life, birth, and death, but is actually a ray that begins at birth, runs through a point we call death, then continues on infinitely?
Okay, so he's saying, don't worry about the crappy life you had here. You're going to be rewarded in heaven. You're going to this is the dirty rags life. But fear not, because God has a plan. It's going to be great afterwards. And this is a dumb argument because, okay, let's grant it as true. So this is the life we get, and if you're a good Christian, you're going to go to heaven and you're going to live happily ever after, which is fine. But why not have this life be good as well? Because it will be really good for some people and it will be really bad for some people. Why? That's my question. That would be my main question here, is why. You have two Christians. One of them, he dies of the cancer, and the other one lives a really good life until the full 90. Why? That makes no sense. Why do some people suffer significantly, catastrophically, astronomically more than other people? So if you can answer that, then maybe this argument might make some sense, sort of, maybe, but probably not. Let's go.
What if that is a proper view of life? What if the Christian worldview is true? Well, you know, if you've been, how many of you in this room had a
If the Christian worldview is true, then God's got some splaining to do about why this guy happened to get cancer at 40 and live miserably for the last 10 years of his life, and some people who are evil. Okay, so let's take it. Let's go back to the case that he was just talking about. The case where the 10-year-old girl, some absolutely horrific stuff had happened, and she was unalived. And it's a cold case. The case has never been solved. Now, we don't know the kind of life that the person, that the actual killer has led, but it could very well have been a great one for him, of course, or her. It could have been a great life from then on. Maybe there was a few more murders stuck in. Maybe they're still alive today. Maybe they're, running some bank, or, you know what I mean? Why did that person get a great life? But let's just assume that the person who got cancer at 40 suffered for the last 10 years of his life and died at 50. Why did he get such a crappy life, assuming that he was a Christian? It makes no sense, but we'll keep on keeping on.
Your surgery in the first year of your life. There are probably some people who did. You did. I'll bet you that was no fun. I bet you your parents were worried sick. If you'd have passed away in that first year, they would have seen that as evil. But now,
character development, though, that the parents would have came out stronger.
Years later, how old are you now? 12. By the time you're 10 or 12 years old, you probably don't even remember the pain you suffered as an infant, because you've now had 10 years since the event. As a matter of fact, when you move further and further away from an evil, painful episode, it has less and less impact on your life. You already know that, right?
Right. So in a billion, trillion, million, gajillion years after you die and you're still alive and somehow enjoying being around, not alive, but you know what I mean, you're still in existence on some plane after 25 billion, trillion years, you probably won't remember this, but that still doesn't take away the experiences that you had of your earthly life, and why some people got it good and why some people got it bad. It's almost like there's no God. Almost.
What you might call evil here has to be measured in terms of the context of your entire life. This is actually, for those of us who are circumcised, something similar, okay? You drop dead on that day, you're thinking, this really stinks, right? What kind of life is this?
Good old genital mutilation on infants.
But by the time you're 1, you can't remember. Well, if our worldview is correct and we have a proper understanding of eternity, then I don't care what mess happens in your life or how grievous it may be, it has to be measured in the context of eternity. And as you do that, your entire material...
Okay, all right, we get it. I've addressed this point like 11 times before he's even finished talking about it. He's still going on this point. I need to find this I need to find the whole video of this. This was just a clip I would assume he'd get into more arguments than this, because the title is "How Can a Good God Allow Evil?" But it's obviously just a clip from a much larger segment. Because I would like to get into some other stuff. You don't have to just do the one point in the video, but we get it. This does not address why God would allow the evil to happen in that person's lifespan, whereas some people will have it great, some people will have it not so great. Why is that?
Existence ends up being a fraction of a millisecond compared to eternity. So all I'm saying is that now you have to measure evil in a different context.
No, you don't.
So a proper understanding of eternity is one of 7 things.
No, you don't, because if the eternity, you wouldn't have evil. This is the only context in which you have to measure evil. You wouldn't measure evil any further out once you're moved on to whatever's next, right? There would supposedly there would be no evil there. This is the only time in which you can measure evil.
We have to consider when evaluating what real evil is in the context of any evil event. So if someone says to me, why would God allow that thing to happen to Jackie? There can't be a God who would allow that to happen to Jackie. Well, I can't tweet that back to you in 140 characters. I can't respond to that in a paragraph on Facebook. I won't even try. You shouldn't try either. Because it turns out it's a complex set of events. And not only that, they're in different proportions to one another.
Don't worry, Jackie, the 10-year-old girl who was brutally unalived. Don't worry. Whereas you only got 10 years. Your murderer very well may have your unalived or whatever. They could have went on to have a great life, but don't worry about it. It's fine. You'll both be together in heaven.
Another. And they have different relationships to one another and causal connections to one another. It's so complicated. All of this then only begins to explain this act. You think I can do all of this in 140 characters?
There's like 4 people in this crowd. Wow. I mean, kudos to him for talking to this, but let's go.
All of this in 140 characters? It's not going to happen. But every case I've ever worked is this complex. This is just the nature of working homicides. Something happens in a heartbeat. It takes me 30 years to put it back together. And when I do, she's still dead. This is the nature of evil. And this is why we know we have to evaluate evil differently. As a matter of fact, why do we call anything evil to begin with? How can we call? Do you mean you don't like it? Do you mean it's evil to you? And by your opinion it's evil? Or do you mean it's transcendently evil for all of us? No matter who you are, it's truly evil.
Okay, so we'll just go off of the assumption that the Christian worldview is true and that this God does exist. We'll go with that evil. So evil, yes, babies born with cancer, it's evil. I would say that there's not one person with a rationally thinking person who would say, I love babies born with cancer. It's my favorite. Nobody says this. So why? I need the answer to this question.
Really? Well, if it's truly evil, what are you using as your transcendent standard by which you would call something transcendently evil? Here's
your God. I'm using your God as the standard. I'm using your God as the standard, and I'm saying he is evil for allowing babies to be born with cancer by his standard.
The problem, if evil's just your opinion, you can remove all evil tomorrow by just simply changing your opinion.
So, all right, so we're going to get into this argument, which he's not going to, right? Because there's only 2 minutes roughly left on this video, so he cannot possibly get into this argument. But he's saying if you don't have a standard of evil or standard of good to compare it to, how could you call something evil when you don't have a standard? You don't have a ruler, basically. But the problem with this line of thinking is neither does he. He doesn't have a ruler. He doesn't have a metric. He doesn't have a standard. All he has is what he thinks, his opinion, of what a God might want. That's all he has. That's all you have if you're a Christian. It's all almost anybody has. Their opinion based off of something else. Secular humanism, our opinion based off of human flourishing, well-being, however you want to word it. Whereas a Christian would say their opinion of what they think. I like to say it is vicarious vicarious morality. That's what Christians have. It's secondhand morality. It's not their morality. It's not God's morality. It's their opinion on what they believe a God's morality would be. That's the best you can get to as a Christian. And that's it. So we'll keep going.
That doesn't work, does it? No. Because
morality by proxy. We'll call it that.
evil is actually more than just your opinion, the opinion of your group, the opinion of your nation, the opinion of our planet. It's truly transcendently evil because it's measured by a truly transcendent standard of good. The C.S. Lewis puts it this way. As an atheist, he said, my argument against God was that the universe seems so cruel and unjust. But how had I got this idea of just and unjust? A man does not call a line crooked unless he has some idea of a straight line. When I was complaining, this universe, what was I comparing this universe with when I called it unjust? You have to have a transcendent standard of just.
And as soon as you can demonstrate that that transcendent standard of just exists, we can begin to have this conversation. This isn't, even if you were to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this transcendent standard exists, that's where the conversation starts. That is not where the conversation ends. Now I need to be convinced on why I should care about what this transcendent standard's opinions on morality are. I need to know what this transcendent standard would have to convince me of why killing, why this transcendent standard. Okay, we're gonna say God. He's talking about God. He's talking about the Christian God. He's talking about Yahweh, whoever you want to call him. I need to know why the Christian God ordered infants to be unalived in the Bible, and got mad and had regret when that order was not carried out. I wouldn't want to say that the order wasn't carried out because it's not clear. It just says that they kept alive all that was good. It doesn't necessarily say that they kept the babies alive, and in fact, it seems like they kept alive just the livestock. That's a different argument for a different day, but he was mad that they even left the livestock alive. He was mad about this. So now this transcendent being would have to convince me of how that was a moral command to unalive the infants, the babies. And mind you, it's not just the children or the young ones, because there's a distinction. He says the children and the infants must be unalived. So now convince me of why this was a moral command. I hope you can understand the point, right? That's where the conversation would begin, is when you prove that this being's existence is that this being exists. But let's keep going.
In order to call it. So if you're going to try to explain evil, sometimes we say, well, gosh, if there's a God, but there's evil, that excludes God. No, actually, if there's true evil, that requires God.
No.
Because you can't call this truly evil unless there's a true standard.
Yes, I can.
What's left to us is to figure out.
Check it out. That's evil. There you go.
Why God would allow it. But the idea that there's true evil
what do you say?
Requires God's existence, because that's the allow it. But actually, if there's true evil, that requires God. Because you can't call this truly evil unless there's a true standard. All that's left to us is to figure out why God would allow it. But the idea that...
Well, okay. Yeah. All right. Yes, that is what we are here to do today.
There's true evil requires God's existence, because that's the measurement against which we're going to call anything truly evil. This means you're back outside the room again. And this is the best explanation. He finishes this by saying,
yeah, see, I'll do this little bit here, and then we'll let the rest of this video play out. I think it's just a cop-out. It really is. It's an easy way to explain any and all problems that might arise from your God commanding and or allowing evil. All you have to do is say, well, he's an all-good God, therefore he cannot have commanded or allowed evil. It's that simple, and it explains nothing. It answers nothing. It convinces no one unless you're already convinced. But let's go. Let's finish this up.
saying this. Of course, I could have given up my idea of justice by saying it was nothing more but a private idea of my own. But if I did that, then my argument against God collapsed too. For the argument depended on saying that the world was really unjust, not simply that it did not happen to please my private fancies. If it's really unjust, it means there must be a really just standard for good.
Okay, so that video was really dumb. I was hoping that he'd advance a little bit more. I didn't realize that this is going to be a clip taken from a much longer video series, but I learned nothing. J. WarnerWallace is a terrible apologist. Not picking on J. WarnerWallace specifically. All apologists are pretty terrible. To kind of cap off what he said at the end there, how can we call something evil if we don't have an objective standard to compare it to? I don't think he used the objective standard, but it's all the same argument. He worded it a little bit differently. It's easy. All I need you to do is care about human life, value human life. That's it. Once you value human life, we can now come to objective agreements on how to better human life through studies, through psychology, sociology, many different fields of the sciences. And we can come to objective conclusions on what actually makes the world better and not have to rely on an ancient book with unknown authors supposedly commanded to be written or divinely inspired by a God that you cannot even prove exists.